Let's break into the Clarity Act today. It's going to be an update. We're going to have a special guest on as well. I just want to jump right into it. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. This is where you guys can get into self-custody. This is one thing I ask for you to do. If you haven't already moved your tokens off of centralized exchanges, this is where you can take the first step in diversifying all of your assets into self-custody. This one works like a credit card with your phone, so it's very easy to use. And super simple to set up. About 3 minutes, literally. I've timed this a couple of times in setting this up for friends, and it is that easy to do. One of the best wallets out there, so check out Tangem. You guys will thank me later. Hit the link down below. It's going to give you a little bit of a discount. Let's get into it today before we bring on our guest. And I want to just remind everybody that the Senate Ag Bill has come out of its first phase and will start its way through into markup, which is going to occur here just in a few days. And the likelihood of this being a bill that might make its way through and to the president's desk could be a reality. And of course, right now we know the challenges that have faced the Clarity Act that of course continue to be challenges. And if you think about the challenges, well, here's the ABA's blueprint for growth for 26 and beyond. And I love the point that they just go out and just say it, and that is protect local lending, stop payment stablecoins from becoming deposit substitutes that slash community bank lending by prohibiting paying interest. You guys know my position on this. This is not about community banks. This is about the big banks. The community banks, I think, are being lopped into this as just a way to defend the banking industry, when the reality is that you should be getting some side of yield on your assets, whether they're privately held or whether you're going through central, doesn't matter, but getting that done. All right, so one thing I want to hit on right here was American Banker. This, of course, is their lobby. I shouldn't say this is the lobby arm, but it is one of, and I call this kind of the misinformation of what's happening from the lobby, because remember, this is one of the largest lobbies out there and the oldest in DC. And what they did here was a statement around banks, consumer groups, all pushing back against stablecoin yield. The idea on the consumer groups was the fact that we're getting into credit unions. That's the idea of consumers pushing back against that. So the point being is they have a good, formidable position. They continue to drive into the United States. And I think the real question is how does this play out in the next few months? Because I think we're going to be facing a couple of months here, especially with all the delays. Here was Aaron Day, and he will be our guest today. And of course, he has put this together in the sense of, and I would say he's probably one of the voices out there that has been against this for some time when Clarity first came through. Remember, the first version of Clarity before it hit the Senate, which had 130 plus amendments tied to it, all of which started attacking the key vectors of what we thought were good things in the Clarity Act, of course, changed quite a bit, but he has been pushing back on this for quite some time. So one of the things that we looked at was, how does this Senate Ag bill compare to the Clarity bill? When you put the three elements of concern into just AI in the principal side of things, and I'll go right down to the chart to kind of show what it will and won't do in this new Ag bill. Crypto rewards, so stablecoin rewards is what we're talking about. The reality is that no, it's not going to be violated in the current Ag bill that's coming out. DeFi and self-custody, no, not necessarily, depending on some of the way that interpretation is done on some of these protections. So good, but there's a slight risk. And then the BRCA alignment, no. So the idea of developers being charged with crimes because they're developing on this, not going to be happening. But watch out for future amendments would be the scenario that could play out of this. So in reality, this could be the bill that actually goes through and maybe gets some traction here, because I don't think that Clarity is going to be one that makes it. So we wanted to bring on Aaron Day, who of course has been talking about this for some time. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me on. I think this is a really important issue. The Genius Act is an important issue as well. I think these are actually, both of them kind of combined are worse than the Patriot Act in terms of surveillance that are added. So I probably have a slightly different perspective on this than most, but happy to get into it. Sure. And by the way, I want to preface this by saying I'm putting out an article about this through the Brownstone Institute next week. I have a draft in front of me right now. It's about 80 pages long. Obviously, I'm going to try to pare that down a bit. But this, unfortunately, most of the media on this issue has been completely one-sided and very pro getting something done one way or the other. There haven't been too many voices that have been calling out surveillance or even the need for any of it to begin with.
Well, the privacy issue that we saw in the amendment changes were one of the biggest things that kind of raised the flag for us to kind of go in and start getting interviews on this. And we've had several on that have been at least, I won't say pro Coinbase, but pro on the stance of pushing back in the sense of where these changes are basically positioning up the banks as really getting an angle on where crypto is going. When you look at the current Clarity Act as it is, and likely we're going to see all kinds of changes coming out this, would you agree that those 3 points are the key ones in terms of yields, privacy, and of course the DeFi components of it?
Well, no, I think the bigger issue is, why do we need market structure provided by Congress at all? I'm not even entirely sure what the necessity for this is. Like, the fact is, we've had self-custody in crypto for 16 years. The fact that we're now sitting here saying, well, hey, maybe this bill might allow self-custody under a whole long series of circumstances, I don't know why we are, from the beginning, saying that this legislation is necessary or good. And I also don't understand why we're at this point where it's Coinbase as a representative of all of crypto versus the bankers, when in reality, this legislation provides a legislative moat that protects Coinbase. So I look at this more as one large centralized exchange trying to get a seat at the table with the bankers, not all of crypto and the promise of crypto versus the traditional banking system.
Yeah, well, I would agree in the sense that, first of all, I mean, when we look at it, we're not siding in the sense of being on Coinbase side, but what they have done is it's kind of positioned a lot of the people we talk to saying, hey, we're for the ideas that are coming out of this, maybe not necessarily the idea of what Coinbase is trying to do, because obviously Coinbase has a dog in the hunt. They're going to have benefits to this, to your point right there, as they're looking at a seat at the table. But the real question is the banking. I want to go back to the point you were making, though, about do we need it? I think obviously we've seen lawsuit after lawsuit, a very active SEC that mostly was active due to the fact that we didn't have much clarity in terms of what is protected, what isn't protected. That, I think, is the bigger picture here. Do you not think there is some sort of regulation that should be in play here to protect a lot of this new innovation that's coming forward?
Well, I think what we should be doing is repealing the 1970 Bank Secrecy Act, not adding additional layers of surveillance. And I think I take a little bit of issue of the fact that, let's look at Congress's track record when it comes to structuring markets. I mean, this is a group of people that have racked up $40 trillion worth of debt. Congress has the power of the purse, and the value of the dollar is down 96% since the Federal Reserve Act was passed. This is a group of people that has protected Epstein and has a slush fund to protect themselves from sexual harassment claims. Why is it that we think that this group has the best intentions of the people in mind? Who do we think it is that they're protecting? And I'm not being hyperbolic about this, because when I talk about the Bank Secrecy Act, I mean, we all have to deal with the Bank Secrecy Act. Anybody that, I mean, this is the source of know your customer, anti-money laundering laws. Well, let's take a look at the history of how that's worked, right? There's $60 billion a year spent on compliance costs with the Bank Secrecy Act. And when you dig into this, you have all of these suspicious activity reports. So anytime anybody does a transaction more than $10,000, a report goes to Treasury. Well, when you dig into this, it turns out only 3 or 4% of those get investigated. And it's been found that 95% of those are people who are in fact innocent, but then get labeled and essentially harassed dealing with the banking system. Meanwhile, companies like Wachovia and JP Morgan Chase and others have been found to have violated this in an egregious way, working with cartels and everything. I mean, I'm not speaking out of school. All this is public information, and no one's gone to jail. It's just been factored in as a cost of doing business. So before we ask the Congress to start looking at providing market structure, why don't we look at the track record of the structures that they've already put in place, what the costs have been, and what the effect has been? And when you do that, I'm sitting here saying, why in a million years would we think that these people are going to help protect consumers or add any improvement to the market at all? That's my starting point.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of this is necessary or helpful. But then when you dig into it, when you look at the amount of lobbying, it's not just the bankers that are lobbying. The crypto industry spent over $20 million on lobbyists. And if you look at who the beneficiaries are of this legislation, it's not the little guy. And in the end, it's not even DeFi when you dig into what the requirements are for being classified as DeFi. The winners in this are going to be the banks. They're going to be the custodians. They're going to be one or two large crypto exchanges. It's going to be Circle. It's not going to help innovation. It's going to protect the incumbent crypto players and the incumbent banking cartel. So, like I said, I've got 80 pages right now on this to kind of break through all of it. I'm not going to go through all of it necessarily in detail now, but I'm not seeing the excitement here. We're talking about real-time trade surveillance. We're talking about 5-year transaction records. We're talking about data sharing agreements with foreign governments, emergency freeze and liquidation powers, and basically universal registration requirements. So all exchanges, brokers, dealers, and associated persons must register. Why would we assume that this is a good thing? When did we decide that we don't have privacy in our financial transactions?
Well, I'm in agreement with that, because those are all parts of the clarity that were kind of outlined, obviously, through the Senate markup that really kind of got us charged up about it. The DeFi Education Fund is reviewing it right now. I would agree. I've talked to Amanda a couple of times. She's been on our show. I feel like they are truly trying to protect DeFi. And of course, this is just some sections out of the setup here. And it's primarily Section 207, which is the software developer protections that we were most concerned with. And I say we, meaning the DeFi, anybody that's for DeFi, protecting that. And if they were to come through this, Aaron, if let's say the DeFi Education Fund came through this, small organization in DC, goes through this, their attorneys say, yeah, this new Senate Ag, this has got some protections for DeFi, and there's some structure here that could get us going forward. Would you be in favor of that, or still no?
I would first start by saying, I want somebody to demonstrate to me a bill that started out with protective provisions where there wasn't scope creep. I want to start by asking, why do you think that if they put something in to get this bill passed, that it will retain its characteristics? In other words, what is the integrity historically? Do the analysis. I've spent a lot of time in politics and political activism. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is do the research on whether you think once this bill is passed, it's going to remain at the level of surveillance and regulatory oversight that it has now, or is it going to become less regulated, or is it going to become more regulated? And I think when you do that analysis, because I'm looking for a counterexample, I have not yet been able to find a counterexample, it only goes in one direction. So whatever is put in place now will only get worse. And what you're giving them is an infrastructure on which they can build and increase scope. And just to give you a few examples on this, the income tax was initially 1%, and it was only on the rich when the 16th Amendment was passed. Within 5 years, rates hit 77%. Social Security was never to be used for identification when created in 1936, and by the 1960s, they were required for bank accounts. The Patriot Act was only for foreign terrorists when it was signed in October of 2001.
Yeah.
And by 2003, we learned that we had sneak and peek warrants being used in domestic drug cases, and it's only expanded from there. The Bank Secrecy Act, by the way, the $10,000 reporting threshold was set in 1970. So if you put that into modern day terms, that would be the equivalent of $80,000, right? So most financial transactions were not being reported under this Bank Secrecy Act when it was passed in 1970. Did you know not only is there an automatic $10,000 reporting requirement, But just 4 or 5 months ago, the Trump administration, the Treasury Department issued a letter. They didn't pass a law. They issued a memo that said in 30 zip codes in California and Texas, the threshold was dropped from $10,000 to $200, meaning just by issuing a memo, they can add that much layer of financial surveillance. So I'm encouraging everyone who is looking at this bill and seriously considering it to study the history of bills and regulations and the extent to which they remain at the level when they're passed, or whether they get more burdensome or less burdensome. And when you do that research on your own, you will come to the conclusion that I've come to, which is that we do not need to pass this bill in any form, and we need to be questioning Congress and examining the onerous surveillance that we already have through your agreement with your banks. Your banks are already sharing information with the IRS using AI. I've identified 13 different ways in which the American people have their financial transactions already surveilled. It's already burdensome. There's no problem that they're trying to solve. And they're using things like, well, we need to get something done. We need some sort of structure. And now we're at the end, and it's just lobbyists carving up more of the pie, adding more surveillance, adding more barriers, and ultimately cutting out other innovation. This will end up killing DeFi. If it doesn't right away, it will 6 months down the line or whenever this gets revisited. If it even needs to be revisited by law, they may be able to take the framework put together here and simply change a rule to crush DeFi. And I'll explore that in my article as well.
What you're saying is there should be zero, absolutely no regulation, and actually go back and look at the Bank Secrecy Act really from a basis before we even get into things like this.
Well, even more than that, I don't know why we have to assume or accept that there should be regulation. Though a lot of times people in America that we have this opinion that we're the freest country and we have the most innovation. None of that's objectively true. The only categories that the U.S. ranks number one in are defense spending and incarceration rate. We're not leading in innovation. That's all propaganda. But let's go back to the whole issue of, when tokenization started to butt up with the SEC. We have a fundamental problem with the SEC. The SEC, these laws from the SEC regulating securities go back to the 1930s. These are FDR era regulations and rules. Well, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company in 1995. I've raised millions of dollars from angel investors, and the process of the legal work that is involved, the legal documentation, all of the investor questionnaires, limiting who can even invest in startups based on all these criteria, absolutely chokes small business and chokes innovation. So we shouldn't be talking about, should we expand the powers of the SEC, which is in essence what the Senate finance bill is about. Should we be expanding that role of the SEC to include tokens? We should be examining why it's so expensive and cumbersome to even start a business, whether you're issuing shares in a paper format or a token. So the problems here, if people are sitting here talking about things like, we want America to lead in innovation, we want to lead America to lead in crypto, start by repealing some of the securities laws from the 1930s. Start by repealing the Bank Secrecy Act. We do not need added regulation, and these regulations America will not be a dominant player because of added regulations. There are already many countries around the world that are much more hospitable for innovators in the crypto space in the United States. This is only going to make it worse.
Let me go through a couple of questions with you. This is kind of just a queue of questions. I don't think I have to ask this first one. Which one of these would you think is going to do better? You're going to say zero. Neither need to be even looked at in terms of the Clarity Act or the DCIA. So I'm going to go with the DCIA though. But you're saying no regulation at all at this point.
No, I'm saying no regulation and repeal the Bank Secrecy Act, and then go and start looking at the CFTC and SEC. If we're really serious about innovating, let's be serious.
All right. Well, then next question is who should determine centralization standards? Congress or
no one?
Yeah. All right. So you're down in the middle. I'm you're not getting any answers here from Aaron. Should a crypto bill be expected to overturn BSA? The Bank Secrecy Act.
Should one be expected?
Yeah.
Meaning, do I think it's going to happen?
Yeah. Do you think one?
No, well, not at this point in time. But what I think needs to happen is we need to rally people. This is why I'm writing such an extensive article, because I don't think people understand the Bank Secrecy Act,
Right.
what it does, how intrusive it is, and how ineffective it has been at its stated goal. So we need to, this is why this stuff's a lot of long form, but we need to go back to first principles, and we need to go back to we need to strike the root here at where we went wrong, because we're not protecting people from terrorism, and we're not protecting investors, and we're not stopping money laundering because of the Bank Secrecy Act any more than we're going to protect innovation or DeFi through the Clarity Act.
All right. Okay. So, in my opinion, when you look at this, I understand where you're coming from, but you look at a crypto bill, I think, yeah, you could get a crypto bill that could be expected to overturn BSA, which would get away from that. So, I don't know. I'm on the fence on this one as well. You're saying absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'm saying, let me say this. Of the $22 million that's being spent by crypto lobbyists and the whatever, $50 to $70 million that's been spent by the banking, who's advocating for the repeal of the Bank Secrecy Act?
Nobody.
Because as you know, Congress doesn't write. Coin Center wrote the Genius Act. None of these politicians write any of this stuff. So this is all being paid for by $2,000 an hour lawyers. Who's funding the repeal of the Bank Secrecy Act?
Yeah, which is not happening. Yeah, you're exactly right. Okay, passing a DeFi crypto bill will open the door to making accredited investors obsolete. If we had a DeFi structure, would that open up the whole gambit for no more accredited investors?
Certainly not in the way that they're going to do it, because all of this legislation is about adding more custodians and more registration. And I'm sure that they would put things in there that would restrict. I'm not seeing any part of the bill that's going to open things up to non-accredited investors. I mean, again, DeFi can work now. I'm not seeing what freedom and privacy aspects are going to come out of this bill. It's only going to make it worse. And the theory that people are saying is, well, it's going to make the rules clear. Well, I mean, I don't think imposing the surveillance state and crushing innovation for the sake of clarity is a good trade-off.
Interesting. I don't guess that would answer this question then in terms of stablecoins. I mean, because we already know stablecoins are freezable, even though they weren't supposed to be. Now we have seen that's already happened. But as long as they provide in some of this regulation a way for you to exit into altcoins, because you could exit into Monero or Zcash or whatever you want to go into if you decided to go that direction, would people just ultimately not care? Because it appears that there's so much movement in this that there's a lot of the population that just seem to not care about this right now, that this is going this direction in terms of the ability to freeze assets.
So I don't blame people for not knowing about this. I was actually just at a meeting with somebody who's pretty well known in economics, and he's actually given talks all around the world in front of tens of thousands of people, and he's asked people when he does these surveys if they know how money works. And the truth of the matter is that we're not taught in school how money works. People aren't reading G. Edward Griffin. People don't actually know how money works. I've experienced this as well with my books and my workshops. People don't have an educational background on this. But once they become aware of it, they find it to be important. One of the challenges that I have, and this is one of the things that came out of the article that I'm writing, is that I've wondered why I'm one of the lone voices out there who has been completely against these bills. And that, by the way, even includes the crypto community, because I will see these articles come out from the crypto community, and these crypto community articles are all pro the bill. And I'm like, why does that happen? And so I dug into the research, and it turns out almost 100% of the articles, you look at Cointelegraph or whatever it happens to be, I've got a list here, I can't find it right now, but it'll be in the article. 100% of the article are pro the legislation. Well, you find out that the companies that own the publications are beneficiaries of the legislation. I can't remember which one it was that Digital Currency Group is the main owner of one of these publications, and so 100% of the publications are pro these bills, and DCG benefits from it at the end. Well, you keep on going through and you look at these crypto publications, you're not getting objective journalism. Nobody's hearing the other side. I'm grateful that you're having me on here today to talk about this, because there aren't many outlets to even have this kind of conversation, and there aren't many people. But it's probably because there's $70 million that's being spent by lobbyists to push for these bills. Nobody's paying me to oppose these bills. There's no money in it. So you have a massive machine with media, the crypto media, that's aligned with wanting the outcome of this because they directly benefit, and you don't have the resources. And then beyond that, who would even know about it? How would the general public even know what's going on? They're hearing the tagline of these bills. They're hearing, this is going to be great, America's going to lead in crypto. They're not even exposed to any of these ideas or in-depth analysis of the legislation itself.
Well, I think the concern I have is that the touch points that have been so aggressive by the banking side of things, that it might be a ploy. I mean, we could be dealing with something where it's a negotiation tactic. They go for the gusto, up front, get as much as you can, realizing that you're going to backfall into a negotiated position or a settlement that still would be to their benefit, but look to be a lot better for the crypto community. That's the concern I'm seeing right now. My last question to you is this: which entity is worse for crypto right now, banks or tech billionaires?
I can't. To me, it's a toss. To me, they're literally. To me, to me, it's the same thing. What you're seeing is theater. When you see Brian Armstrong at Davos, he's not sitting there defending DeFi. He's not sitting there. Look at the legislation. He benefits from the legislation. This legislation protects Coinbase and makes it harder for somebody else to start a crypto exchange. That is not pro-innovation. I view what he's doing as trying to get a seat at the table. He wants to be a part of Davos. He doesn't want to blow it up. And I got into Bitcoin in 2012. And when in the early days in Bitcoin, when you would go to conferences, people were talking about things like, hey, this is an opportunity to separate money and state. And we just came off of the financial crisis where even politically, the right and the left were against the banks. They were against the bailouts. And so we went from a period of time where in these conferences, people looked at central bankers with disgust. Now I look at Armstrong and some of these crypto billionaires, and I realized it wasn't disgust, it was envy. They just want to have a seat at the table. So I don't view them as a different thing to even pick a side. Now, obviously, when you say tech billionaires, there's a continuum of tech billionaires, but the ones that we're talking about that are pushing legislation, the ones that we're talking about that are in the administration, are pushing more of a technocratic agenda than a pro-freedom agenda.
Yeah. I look at it in the sense that tech billionaires are the ultimate winners on this because of the platforms they're building. The banks will eventually be basically just ruled. They'll be like old internet technology that just won't exist anymore once tokenization truly gets out there. So this is going to be
I will make this bet. If this legislation actually is successful and happens, then what you're going to find is Coinbase will end up being owned by JP Morgan Chase or BlackRock. We're going to end up with the same banks. That it's going to be indistinguishable. That's where this is going. This is the level of capture coming out of this legislation.
There you have it. Aaron Day, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.